Will the Los Angeles Rams or the New Orleans Saints make noise in the NFC playoffs? We're going to talk about that on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert for the Locked On Titans podcast, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy, local expert from the Locked On Cardinals podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, so make sure that you go to your favorite team's crossover episode and get some behind enemy lines information. But as for today's Locked On NFL podcast, we got to talk about this big Thursday night football matchup in the NFC between the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Will either team make noise in the playoffs? We'll discuss also our updated Super Bowl predictions. And Alex has got a little bit of a theory about who it could be. So excited to hear that. And then, of course, the best games of the week. Football is going fast. We'll talk about some of the best matchups we have this weekend. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But with that being said, Alex, Thursday night football, and I know these may not be the flashiest teams. These may not be the big-time teams at the top of the standings, but this is an important battle for playoff position in the NFC. We have the 7-7 New Orleans Saints going on the road to Los Angeles against the 7-7 Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Rams obviously are not going to catch the San Francisco 49ers for that division, but they're in the heat of things in the wild card race right now. They're the 7 seed in the NFC behind the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. Looks like the Eagles or the Cowboys are obviously going to steal one of those spots. So the Rams are right in there battling. And then the Saints, they're tied at the top of the NFC South at 7-7 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they could also be in the wild card chase if they don't get the division. And maybe we see 2 NFC South teams in there. So, Alex, I guess my question is, if the Rams and the Saints get in, which one do you think has a better chance of making some noise in the playoffs and maybe pulling an upset?
Rams. I said when we first started talking about our MVP odds and stuff, like, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or whatever, we did mid-season, or I think it was maybe a little bit past that. The name I brought up as a dark horse is Matthew Stafford. Now, he's not going to win the MVP at this point, but I see them as a better and much more functional version of Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, where they've done it before. Sean McVay would never de-pants Russell Wilson verbally in front of everybody. Sean McVay is an adult. Matthew Stafford has won a Super Bowl at this point. Cooper Kupp, when healthy, is still pound for pound the best receiver in the league. Like, I don't care. Take Justin Jefferson. That's fine. I don't care. I'll take Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford.
I would take others.
Whoever's throwing the ball in Justin Jefferson. And it's them, because you don't need to be dominant on both sides of the ball at this point of the year. You need to have one side that you trust, and that offense now is trustworthy. The offensive line is healthier. It's not what it was with Big Wit over there and Noteboom as a younger guy. This is Kyron Williams. This is Cooper Kupp. Rinse and repeat. What did Denzel Washington say in Remember the Titans? It's like Novocaine. Do it 7 plays, and it's going to work. And that's what they do. And if he gets 15 targets a game, Puka Nacua gets 10, and Kyron Williams touches the ball 25 times, they could make a run a lot longer and a lot deeper in the playoffs than people thought initially, or at least 5 or 6 weeks into the season.
It's funny because the question, the way it's posed, I think you have to say Rams. I think they have a better chance of maybe getting hot here at the end of the year. If the Rams do get like a 7 seed and they play against the winner of the NFC South, that could be a game that's very winnable for them. Then you go on the road, you take on San Francisco, and while San Francisco looks like a juggernaut, division games can be wonky. When you play a division opponent, and McVay has been playing against Shanahan for a long time, and obviously I think that's the right answer. But I want to just say this. I think if you had to say who could win one playoff game, like who would you bet could just get one win in the playoffs? Maybe not make a deep run, but which team do I think has a better chance of getting one win? I honestly think it's the Saints, because the Saints, they could lose this week to Los Angeles. Tampa Bay's playing Jacksonville. And while Jacksonville's banged up and not playing their best football, I think Jacksonville certainly could win that game. And then the Saints and the Bucs are both 7-8, and they're both there. I think that there's a chance that the Saints could have a home game against, say, the Rams, against, maybe the Vikings, a team like that. Maybe the Seahawks get in. And you're telling me the Saints at home in New Orleans in a playoff game against one of those teams? I think having that home game possibility that Los Angeles doesn't have, because they're obviously not going to have a chance to win their division, I think that does give New Orleans maybe a slight edge to win one game, which I think is more realistic than either of these teams making a run, quite honestly, is maybe one of them sneaking in and getting one. But overall, I do agree with you that as for a deep run, I think the Rams have the coaching that could give them an ability to maybe win a couple of games in the playoff and surprise some people.
Yeah, and the quarterback play. I mean, if you put them head-to-head with the Saints and Rams, you're taking the head coach, taking the quarterback. And I think, and the number one wide receiver, and the best defensive player, and arguably
Chris
the
Olave
running
is
back.
pretty good. I'm just saying. Cooper Kupp's had a down year, but the combination of Chris Olave and whoever else with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, I still give that edge.
And Aaron Donald, like them playing the hits is still good in a vacuum for like 7 games this year if they make a run. I'm not saying they will. I'm definitely not saying they will. But nobody wants to play, and it'll be interesting. San Francisco travels to LA in week 18 to play the Rams, so that could be a playoff preview. Like, who knows? The 49ers, with the way the Eagles have been playing, they could have shorn up the number 1 seed at that point and just sit everybody in week 18.
Exactly. That gives so right now on FanDuel, the Rams are -4.5 point favorites. I think that's a little rich, but I do think the Rams are better. They are at home, but it's an LA home game. You know how that is. So I'm just saying, I agree with you that the Rams are the more talented team that could make a better run if they get hot. But I think also that the Saints have a better chance of getting that home opportunity, which they could get a win that way against a mixed bag in the middle of the NFC South. But who do you think is going to win tonight, though?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Rams. And I don't know if the 4.5, that's fine. I mean, I know that the lines have shrunk. Like, odds makers say that it's no longer -3, that no longer giving 3 points giving 3 points as a home team. It's less now because teams are winning more on the road. But listen, it's stopping Cooper Kupp is one thing. Puka Nacua has shown that he is a bona fide wide receiver in this league. This is the Tyler Higbee time of year where he comes out of the woodwork. Kyron Williams, again, the dude is an absolute, if he can hold on to the ball, he can touch the ball 25 times a game, 150 all-purpose yards, touchdown, 2 touchdowns. Like, Matthew Stafford becomes a wizard this time of year. And I think that while the Saints may have a higher, very, very marginally higher floor because 1 to 53, they're probably more talented, the ceiling is through the roof with the Rams compared to the Saints. The Saints have a very low ceiling with their offense.
That's a very, very good way to put it, Alex. Going through those two teams. That's a great way to put a mark, a period on the conversation. Should be a good football game tonight, though. These are one of these games where, like Alex has been saying for a few weeks, I'm going to remind you, these may not be the most exciting, great teams to watch all the time, but appreciate football while it's here because it's going fast, ladies and gentlemen. And with that being said, and being so close to the end of the season, it's time for some Super Bowl predictions. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Do want to thank you guys again for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. Like I just said, the NFL season, the regular season is going fast. So it's a great time to get in on the action. They have spreads, player props, over-unders. I love the single game parlays on FanDuel, and you get these single game parlay boosts that can help you win more. Visit FanDuel FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON. And get in on the action this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, football fans, we're going to continue this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about the Thursday night football matchup between the Rams and the Saints, but now it's time for some Super Bowl predictions. Do want to remind you, though, at the end of the show, we are going to be talking about the best games of Week 16. So looking at the canvas right now, there are a few Super Bowl contenders on either side. Now, there are some obvious favorites as well. I don't know that there's necessarily an obvious favorite in the AFC, but in the NFC, obviously there is. But where we stand right now, and Alex, I have to be honest, I think I did say, I think my Super Bowl prediction all year has been the Eagles and the Ravens. I think that's been my Super Bowl prediction. I do believe. That's what I have written down over here. And that doesn't look terrible right now, I'm happy to say. But it also looks a little shaky with the Eagles on a losing streak. So do you remember what your initial prediction was, and how does that kind of lead you to what your prediction might be right now?
I think I might have picked, well, this was predicated upon Brock Purdy not being the guy before the season started. I think I picked Seattle and the Chiefs because it's Patrick Mahomes until it isn't. Even regardless of what they're going through now. If Kadarius Toney could catch a ball, maybe it'd be a little bit different there.
Line up right, little things.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Kelce got older real quick. Very
That's
swiftly.
the price of the contract for Patrick Mahomes, though, right? They're paying the price of they're trying to find cheap talent at different spots because they have such big contracts with not only him but Chris Jones as well. Some of the free agent offensive linemen. So
yeah, so I mean, but for now, like Tyler, before we do actual predictions, like just real quick, like, and we could do a whole segment on this, but I like to surprise you from time to time, like, and let's just take like 2 minutes on this, because I do want to hit the actual predictions and everything in my conspiracy theory, etc. Are there any teams that are fringy right now that you truly like, oh, they could make a run? Like, are there any teams that you're like, that team is a lot better than their record, and they have a clear path regardless of where they play to win a Super Bowl? Are there any teams like that, like down towards the bottom? I mean, it'd probably be the AFC because there's so many good teams there, but the NFC is so much more easy to get through. If you're a team like that. Like, I don't know. I think the
only team that you could really, really say, in my opinion, is the Bills. I think they're the only team that truly fits that criteria, in my opinion. I think on the other side, the one team that might get an honorable mention, if you had to pick two and really honestly look yourself in the mirror and pick two, I think the Rams are the only other team that I could even trick myself into answering with this question. So I think it's just the Bills. I think the Bills right now have a path forward. The Dolphins, they could, crumble towards the end of the season here a little bit. They have some tough games. The Bills schedule isn't the worst. I think that the Bills are the only team that really answers that question.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then pivoting into, my actual, I have this newfound like vacuum love affair with the Ravens, which is new for me, because I've always thought until Lamar Jackson had that year where he should have been MVP, but then he got hurt. Remember, like I always go back to that year, was a couple of years ago, where he caught up to the passing game in the NFL. And a lot of it was jump balls and guys that he trusted to go get him, whether it be Mark Andrews or otherwise. And we're seeing that this year. We saw with Odell Beckham Jr. with a huge jump ball in a huge moment of the game against Jacksonville. He's made it to that level of you can trust him in pretty much any scenario. Because he's not throwing bad balls. He threw a bad ball against Jacksonville, but he's there now. I trust him over Josh Allen. And I think that with that defense, they're healthy with their bevy of running backs. And even though, Keaton Mitchell got hurt, like, it doesn't matter. And they've got a lot of young, fast receivers where one of my favorite things to say here is if you can translate to any weather pattern, that's a huge leg up in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And they can.
Absolutely.
They can play in any weather.
Yep.
So I think the Ravens, and listen, I got to pick the 49ers. Like, at this point, they're playing a draft your own Madden team where you could pick all the players you want.
Yep.
And that was great roster construction by John Lynch, and then getting super lucky by taking a flyer on Brock Purdy and it working out.
Well, I think while that is lucky to a point, I think the real luck came from hiring Kyle Shanahan.
Well, maybe.
And sticking with him when things have been shaky and blah, 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 because he's just so brilliant. And I think Shanahan, to me, right now, is in his Andy Reid Philadelphia Eagles face. Like, that's where Shanahan is. It's like this guy is so brilliant. He's gotten us there a few times. He's with the Atlanta and then with San Francisco. Like, obviously, he's brilliant. He's revolutionizing things. His coaching tree is starting to impact stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But, like, can he really do it? Can he get one? And I just wonder whether Shanahan can knock that off now, or if it will be an Andy Reid situation where he has to go to a new team. And I wonder. But, yeah, right now, for me, I think I'd have to change my prediction to Ravens and San Francisco 49ers. I think that's what you have. I think, like you said, I trust Lamar. And sometimes they say, the proverbial they, of course.
Yeah.
I've heard at least before, it's not about being able to run the ball all the time. It's about being able to run the ball when you need to.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Like, you're never going to just line up and literally 9-10 yards over and over in the playoffs. That's not going to happen with teams like that, especially in games that matter. But you got to be able to run the ball when you need to, on short yardage, in the red zone, on the goal line. And because of Lamar's ability to run the ball and his willingness to do it, and it's Josh Allen gets hit so much, they can't literally run midfield quarterback sweeps on first down stuff. Like, the Ravens can do that with Lamar and trust him to take care of himself in the playoffs. So that ability to run the ball, like you said, that's part of the all-weather translation. That's why I feel still good about the Ravens pick. I think the Chiefs are having a down year. I would take the Chiefs number 2 if I had to, but I don't believe in the Dolphins. I don't believe in the Jaguars. I think the wild card pack is weak with Houston and Cincy and Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I just don't believe in any of it. And Indy, I don't believe in any of them. I do believe in Lamar Jackson. And that's why I said Buffalo too, So for me, I'm still sticking with Lamar in the Ravens. But I think right now you would be a fool to say anything other than San Francisco at this point.
Yeah, well, and listen, like, before I get into my conspiracy theory that is probably true, is the Ravens' final 3 games, they play the 49ers this week to wrap up Christmas football.
Oh, we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're going to hit
it all full circle, Alex.
Yeah, it all full circle. So they go 49ers, Dolphins, and then Pittsburgh. So we're going to find out a lot about this Ravens team. They lost Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell wasn't doing a whole lot. Okay, he showed flashes, but they have LeGarrette Blount Part 2 in their backfield in Gus Edwards.
Right.
Okay, they have guys they can eat clock where it's not Lamar Jackson doing it. And they've got Odell Beckham Jr. Say what you want about him, journeyman, whatever. In big games, he shows up. He scored the first touchdown in the Super Bowl before tearing his ACL. He had a huge catch when he tore his ACL.
Yep. Primetime game.
Zay Flowers is a guy you don't want to match up against. You can have a linebacker on him if they line up 3 wide or 4 wide. Like, they've got talent there, and Isaiah Likely's been great as a backup. So, Tyler, let's get to the important stuff here. Have you heard the conspiracy theory that the NFL script is a joke now? It's a running joke. Even Goodell is in on it now.
Right.
The last couple years, and check this out because I made Tyler look at this before we actually did this. Look at the colors of the Super Bowl logo. The last 2 seasons, the colors of the Super Bowl logo was one of the colors of the team that made the Super Bowl. One each. Okay, a couple years ago it was orange and yellow, orange and goldy for the Ravens and Rams. Last year with who was it last year? The Chiefs and Eagles.
And Chiefs.
It was a little bit lighter red, a little bit lighter green, but this isn't like stretching the truth. And lo and behold, Tyler, I don't want you to say anything except for color and color. What are the 2 colors of the Super Bowl 58 logo?
They're purple and red.
Purple and red. Okay, so that's interesting, Tyler. So go with me here. Let me ask you, what is the predominant color for the San Francisco 49ers?
It's red.
It's red. So that's funny because that's one of the colors on the logo. What is the predominant color, aside from black, for the Ravens?
It's purple, I think.
That's interesting. So purple and red, what you just said, if we rewind the tape here on StreamYard as we're recording, you would have said that the logo colors are purple and red for the Super Bowl 58, right?
Fair. It's fair.
If that comes true, we're in a simulation. I thought that Jordan Love having the same exact numbers through 11 weeks as a starter that Aaron Rodgers did during his to the number.
That was
passing yards, touchdowns record.
More. They're doing it more. Yep.
They're not even faking it anymore.
Yep. Now it's a test to see if we notice. It's not about hiding anymore. It's seeing what can we really get away with. But all jokes aside,
everybody's learned it.
I think this is kind of, like I said, I think it's kind of like the Madden curse, where there are some examples where it does work, maybe some examples that don't work, but we're just going to, there are more that do. There are more that do. So we'll see, but everybody along with us, I guess we'll be watching that going forward. But going forward with today's show, we got to talk about the best games of Week 16, which again could be a Super Bowl preview. So we're going to discuss all that here in just a second. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. It's your team every day here, the Locked On Podcast Network.
So as you get into Christmas time, you want to be flexible. This episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by DoorDash. And sure, maybe you don't want to order food on Christmas because you want the DoorDashians to be able to spend time at home with their family around Christmas time. Like I'm in San Diego visiting my dad and stepmom and sister, and we ordered DoorDash a couple nights ago because we were sitting around having an adult beverage after a long day of work outside here in San Diego. We're like, you know what? We don't want to get up. And DoorDash has fantastic options in any city that you're in. And it makes for more bandwidth. Like Tyler and I both work from home. We have multiple jobs. We work from home. Okay. And we don't have time to go out and get food if there's not food in the house. And that's why DoorDash is so amazing. What's even more amazing is you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCK23. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change. Terms apply. NFL Thursday. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals at Clancy's Corner on Twitter. Tyler Rowland, Locked On Titans at Tic Tac Titans on Twitter. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're getting to the juicy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like around Christmas, it's kind of wonky. And like in the last couple of years, it's like just throw any football game on Saturday. It doesn't matter. It's NFL football on Saturday. And really, the NFL is starting to double down scheduling wise. Like they're putting very good games in prime time down the stretch. Now it may not seem like, Thursday night tonight is like a massive game. We talked about this. Like there's playoff implications.
Football game though. If you don't want to watch this game, you don't like football. Like that's how I feel. These are two 7-7 teams. One can win their division. One has a good shot at the wild card. Like this is the time of year. If you don't like this game, then you don't like football. That's all that it comes down to.
Right. Right. And, with so many teams just log jammed between 6 and 8 wins with 3 wins to go, anything's possible. Anything's possible. Mm-hmm. So as we pivot here into week 16, Tyler, nobody listened to me. I listened to me. We got some massive games, just absolutely massive games. I'm going to start with one because I've been a truther of this quarterback since he was drafted in 2016, whenever it was. Blonde kid out of California, Jared Goff and the Lions going to play Minnesota with that. I mean, Brian Flores should get coach of the year consideration what he's been doing with that defense over in Minnesota. They don't have a lot of star power there, but Detroit going to another dome to play in a game that they need to win to keep up after that just brutal beatdown of the Denver Broncos. I'm now curious to see. It's like a case study with the Lions. Like, how far can they take this? Now there are real expectations. And Jared Goff has proven that he's an absolute stud. Sam Laporta could win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like, he probably won't, but he's shattering rookie numbers.
And how long Stroud is out.
There's 2 tight ends.
Hope he gets healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And he's unlikely to play. I don't think he's going to play this week either. Laporta had 3 touchdowns. Right. I did circumvent that to win my fantasy football league, even though I went up against Sam Laporta last week in the playoffs. But yeah, that's one for me. Like, that's a football fan game that I'm really looking forward to playing or watching.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent one. And look, I mean, I'm not going to bury it any longer. We gotta dive right in. On Christmas night, 8:00, Ravens and 49ers. Again, like we've been talking, could be a Super Bowl preview. Yep. Do you think the Ravens can go in against the 40? I mean, they're both 11-3, but do you think the Ravens can go into San Francisco? If the Ravens go in and beat San Francisco here, they are the clear Super Bowl favorite, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is going to be Brock Purdy do it again. Just do it again. It's going to be do it again until they win a Super Bowl with him, which is really unfair.
No one's going to believe Brock Purdy can do it until he does it because of how improbable it all is. That's just what it is. Until he does it, no one's really going to believe. Me included. There's nothing that kid can do to make me really think that he's an elite quarterback that's ever taken the team to a Super Bowl. And even then, people are going to say he's Brad Johnson, he's Trent Dilfer. You know what I mean? Even then, it's going to happen. I don't know that he can, but if he wins, it won't matter. You know what I mean? People can say it all they want. He won. That's all that really matters. Last lap. So
the majority of quarterbacks are game managers in the history of football. How many real
there are less elite quarterbacks than other quarterbacks? You know, most of the decent quarterbacks in the NFL, right? If we talk about real elite quarterbacks, there's probably 5, 6 that are actually like real difference makers. You put them on different teams, it changes things. You know what I mean? It's probably Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's it. Probably.
You can't put Justin Herbert in there anymore.
No, you can't. He's a really good quarterback, but he isn't making the difference, you know? Right. So, yeah, that's where I'm at there. But anyways, who do you think wins, San Francisco or the Ravens?
Yeah, I'll talk to you after the game. I don't know.
I'm going to say Ravens. Say Ravens.
So
I think
it's going to be a litmus test for both. It's not really going to matter. It's going to be good for bravado and confidence moving forward. Both these teams are really good. This is going to be fun for us, and I want to see Lamar Jackson do it against that defense. I want to see Lamar Jackson, I want to see what this offense is going to look like moving forward, because you got to keep Lamar Jackson in a cocoon of some sort. You can't just have him run like rookie year Lamar Jackson. They've got to have offense outside of that. So, and this is so what are we looking for most? So we can take the whole segment for this. There are other good games, but
there's one other game that's really good.
Yeah, right. There's just so much popcorn in this. It's like Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey together are scoring 4 touchdowns a game, 5 touchdowns a game. This is Madden on easy stuff. And then when you forget about it, we got Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. So if this is going to come down to the Ravens secondary and the Ravens pass rush. This is going to come down to the Ravens defense as a faction. They shut down Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence fumbled the ball a couple times without anybody touching him, which helped. But I think this is going to be the Ravens defense game to win if they're going to win it. It's got to be lower scoring. You can't outscore San Francisco. You just can't do it. So that's what it would come down to. I do think San Francisco is going to win. This is their first real look at us, Brock Purdy, let's go test down the stretch for the number 1 seed.
Well, they say that teams improve and get better. You know what I mean? That's what football is all about. I know Mike Vrabel, listening to the Titans and the press conference and stuff like that. Mike Vrabel was always saying it's about improving throughout the year. And that seems to be a common theme the NFL coaches say. And it only makes sense as well. You should get better as the season goes along. That's what good teams are going to do. So right now, these games, there's no Chiefs lost to the Colts last year in the first couple of weeks. You know what I mean? There's none of that. These teams should be good now. They should have improved to be really good now. So I think this game matters.
And very rarely do two teams, I'm going to steal the lead for you. Very rarely do two teams play each other on the road and at home, neither of whom employees have to pay state income tax. This case, the Dallas Cowboys and Miami Dolphins in South Beach. Tyler, I stole it, but I'm going to lead you into it. This is Dak Prescott coming off his worst performance of the year in Buffalo against a team who had been, the San Francisco 49ers of 6 weeks ago who couldn't win a game. Everything looks dysfunctional. And then you see Josh Allen all right, giddy up. And look at what's happened with Ken Dorsey out. Things are changing. Okay. The Cowboys were perfect since losing to the Cardinals in week 3. They've been pretty much perfect. They've been the best offense in the NFL. One of them, everything's been running on all cylinders, CeeDee Lamb, whatever. And the Dolphins can't beat good teams. So who wins? I know this is going to be fun. Let's start with who wins this game, and then you tell me why. Let's go backwards.
I think Dallas wins. I think Dallas beats them up in the trenches. I I just think it's funny that the Dolphins lost a bad game, played terrible, really, against the Titans, and then they got the bounce back against the Jets and drub them 30-0. The Cowboys play bad against Buffalo, and they got to go down to South Beach and play Miami. So that's a tough road to hoe. But I think Dallas finds a way to get back to good.
Well, I mean, Tyreek Hill's health is the biggest concern here. Raheem Mostert has 20 touchdowns this year. He had 19 in his career up until this year. Career resurgence for him, fantastic for him. He can never stay healthy. He always had huge starts to the year and then would get hurt. Devon Achane's been a revelation. Like, I wonder if they're going to get to a point with Tyreek Hill being hobbled that they're going to turn into a run-first team and say, you know what? We're going to beat you by death of 1,000 cuts instead of, an 8-yard slant to the house for 80 yards.
I don't think they can win that way consistently.
Well, we don't know yet. And I think that it'll set up the play action a little bit more. Like, this is what in college, Tua always had a good run game, and they set up the play action. Tua was able to do what he did with the bevy of NFL receivers that he had at his disposal. It could kind of be like that, and that's something that could pivot people's trust in this team going into cold weather if you can run the ball. The big knock on them is if you can't throw the ball down the field, you can beat the Dolphins. If you can stop them from that. If they can run the ball with their two-headed monster, they have Salvin Ahmed in there. They've got so many running backs that, they could utilize, and maybe they can get a win that way. But I agree. I think it's going to be Dallas for the win.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. As I always say, start your weekend early. Stay safe out there.